is Ifeanyi, and this is the story of how a poor orphan girl outsmarted the greediest king in all the land. Sit down, make yourself comfortable because what I'm about to tell you will make you laugh, shake your head, and maybe even learn something important about life. In a small village called Nweze, there lived a young girl named Shioma. She was about 14 years old, maybe 15. Nobody really knew because both her parents had died when she was very small, and there was no one left to remember the exact day she was born. Shioma lived in a tiny mud house at the edge of the village, the kind of house that leaked when it rained and got unbearably hot during the dry season. The walls had cracks, the roof was patched with old zinc and palm fronds, and at night she could hear rats running across the rafters above her head. Every morning, before the first cock crowed, Shoma would wake up. While other children her age were sleeping peacefully in their parents' home, Shoma was already up, tying her old wrapper around her waist, getting ready for another day of struggle. She would sweep people's compound for a few naira here and there. She would fetch water from the stream for the elderly women who could no longer make the journey themselves. Sometimes, if she was lucky, someone would give her leftover, maybe some curries and soup that have gone cold, or a piece of yam that was too small for their own families. That was how Shoma survived, day after day, month after month, year after year. The people of Umueze were not wicked people, but they were not particularly kind either. They saw Shoma as just another poor orphan, someone to pity from a distance, but not someone to truly help. That girl will suffer all her life. They will whisper among themselves as they watch her walk by with a bucket of water. She has no family, no husband waiting for her, no dowry, nothing. What kind of future does she have, eh? It is well, oh. But Shioma, she never complained. She had learned long ago that complaining changed nothing. Instead, she worked hard, kept her head down, and in the quiet moment before she fell asleep at night, she would whisper prayers to God, hoping that one day somehow things would get better. One afternoon, the rainy season, where the clouds hung heavy and grey over Umueze, Shoma was walking back from the stream with a bucket of water balanced perfectly on her head. The rain had been falling heavily for 3 days straight, and the path had turned into rivers of thick, slippery mud. As she walked carefully, placing one foot in front of the other, trying desperately not to slip and spill the water she had worked so hard to fetch, she noticed something strange at the side of the path. The heavy rains had washed away part of the earth near a big Iroko tree, and there, half buried in the mud, was something that caught her eyes. Something that glinted even in the dim afternoon light. Shoma stopped. She looked around to see if anyone was watching. The path was empty. Everyone else had the good sense to stay indoors during this rain. Slowly, she put down her bucket and moved closely to the strange object. She knelt down in the mud, not caring that her wrapper was getting dirty, and she began to dig with her bare hands, pulling away the wet and heavy soil. And then her fingers touched something hard, smooth and cold. With trembling hands, she pulled it out of the earth. It was a pot, but not just any pot. This was a golden pot, covered in the most beautiful designs and symbols she had ever seen before. Strange markings that seemed to move and shake when she looked at them. Even when covered in mud and dirt, the pot shone with a light that seemed to come from somewhere deep within it. Shoma heart began to race so fast, she thought it might jump out of her chest. She looked around, her eyes wide open with fear and excitement. What if someone saw her? What if they tried to take it? With shaking hands, she wrapped the pot tightly in her wrapper, picked up her bucket, and hurried home as fast as her leg could carry her, slipping and sliding in the mud. When she got to her small house, she locked the door, even though the lock was just a piece of wood that slid across, and she sat down on her mat, breathing heavily. For a long moment, she just stared at the muddy pot in her lap. Then slowly, she unwrapped it. She fetched some water and a rag and began to clean the pot, carefully wiping away the mud and dirt. As the dream came off, The pot shone even brighter, filling a tiny dark house with a warm golden light. The symbol on its surface seemed to dance as well like living things. And then something incredibly happened. Something that Shoma would remember for the rest of her life. The pot spoke. Yes, you heard me right. The pot actually spoke with a voice like wind on a breezy day, gentle but clear, ancient but kind. Shioma, it said, and hearing her own name from this magical object made her gasp. You have found me, and I have been waiting for someone like you. Someone whose heart is pure and who has suffered much but has not become bitter. I will grant you a gift. Whatever food you wish for, simply place your hand on me and speak, and it shall appear inside me. But remember this, I will only serve those whose heart are true. The greedy and the wicked shall receive nothing but trouble from me. Chioma nearly fainted with shock. Her hands shook as she reached out and touched the pot with trembling fingers. In a whisper that was barely audible, she said, Rice, rice and chicken stew. Immediately, the most delicious aroma she had ever smelled filled her tiny house. The scent of perfectly cooked rice, rich tomato stew, and tender, well-seasoned chicken made her mouth water. When she looked inside the pot, there it was, a steaming plate of the most beautiful jollof rice with pieces of chicken so tender they fell off the bone. Chioma ate slowly, savoring every single bite. She ate until her stomach was full for the first time in years, maybe for the first time in her entire life. That night, she slept with a smile on her face and hope in her heart. For the next few weeks, Chioma's life changed completely. She no longer went to bed with her stomach growling in hunger. She ate 3 times a day, sometimes even 4. She had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just like the rich people in the village. She ate pounded yam with a greasy soup. She ate fried plantains and beans. She ate whatever her heart desired. But Chioma was not a foolish girl. She remembered that the village people said something about her and how they have written her off as someone that will never amount to anything. So she kept the pot a secret, hidden and careful, under her sleeping mat. She continued to sweep compounds and fetch water during the day, so no one could suspect that anything had changed. At night, in the privacy of her home, with her door locked tight, she would bring out the golden pots and eat like a queen. But you know how it is in our Nigerian villages. Secret don't stay secret for long. There's always someone watching, always someone noticing things they shouldn't notice. One day, about 3 weeks after Chioma found the pot, Mama Ngozi, the village gossip, the woman who knew everyone's business and made it her duty to spread it far and wide, noticed something that was different about Chioma. Mama Ngozi said to herself one morning as she watched Chioma walk past. What is this? Chioma is looking different. And indeed, Chioma was looking different. Her cheeks, which had been hollow and sunken, were now full and round. Her skin, which had been dull and ashy from malnutrition, was now glowing and smooth. Her eyes were brighter, and she walked with more energy than anyone had ever seen from her before. Even when her wrappers seemed to fit better, as if her body had finally filled out to a healthy size. Chioma, Mama Ngozi called out, waving her hand frantically. Come here, my dear. Come and greet me properly. Chioma walked over respectfully and knelt to greet the older woman. As was customary, good morning, Mama Ngozi. Mama Ngozi grabbed Chioma's arm and looked her up and down with sharp and suspicious eyes. You are looking well, oh. Very well. What are you eating these days, eh? Have you found a rich man to take care of you? Or have you found work somewhere that you're not telling us about? Chioma laughed nervously and pulled her arm away gently. No, Mama Ngozi. I'm just I'm just managing. God has been faithful. Managing? Mama Ngozi eyes narrowed. Chioma, I have known you since you were a small girl. I have never seen you look like this healthy. Something is going on. What is this? Nothing, ma. I should go now. I have compounds to sweep. And before Mama Ngozi could ask more questions, Chioma had hurried away. But Mama Ngozi was not convinced, not at all. She began to watch Chioma closely, following her with her eyes wherever she went, asking other people if they had noticed anything strange. And then, one evening, when darkness had fallen and most people were in their homes, Mama Ngozi did something very wrong. She went quietly to Shioma's house and peeped through a crack in the wall. What she saw made her eyes nearly pop out of her head like ripe udara fruit falling from a tree. There was Shioma sitting on her mat, talking to a golden pot that shone like the sun itself. And as Mama Ngozi watched, frozen in shock, Shioma placed her hand on the pot and said something. Suddenly, just like magic, food appeared before her eyes, a full plate of pounded yam and vegetable fish soup that was filled with meat also. Mama Ngozi's mouth fell open. Her heart began to race. Without thinking about the consequences, without considering whether what she was about to do was right or wrong, she turned and ran straight to her friend Mama Keleshi's house. You will not believe what I just saw, she whispered urgently. Even though she was practically shouting, Shioma, that poor orphan girl, she has a magical pot, a golden pot that produces food out of thin air. I saw it with my own two eyes. Mama Kelechi eye widened. What? Are you sure? Maybe you were seeing things in the darkness. I am telling you, I saw it clearly. We need to tell everyone. And then she went to tell everyone. By the next morning, the whole village was buzzing with the news. People gathered in small groups, whispering and pointing at Shioma whenever she walked past. Is it true? They asked each other. Does she really have a magical pot? Some people were happy for her. Finally, that poor girl has caught a break, they said. But others, the jealous ones, the greedy ones, they said things like, why should an orphan have such a treasure? What did she do to deserve it? By noon, the news had spread to the neighboring villages, and by evening, it has reached the palace of King Okonkwo. Now, let me tell you about King Okonkwo. If there was a competition for the greediest man in all the land, he would win first prize without even trying. He was not a good king, not like his father had been or his grandfather before him. No, King Okonkwo cared only about himself and his own comfort. He had 3 wives, all of them beautiful, all of them draped in expensive coral beads and the finest wrappers money could buy. He had 12 children who wanted for nothing. His palace had 20 rooms, each one filled with treasures and expensive things. His barns were overflowing with yams, so many yams that some of them rotted before they could even be eaten. He had more money than he could ever count, stacked in boxes and baskets in his own treasury. But it was never enough. Never, never enough. He always wanted more. When his chief advisor, a thin man named Obi, came to him with the news about Shioma Golden Pot, King Okonkwo eyes lit up with a greedy fire that would frighten anyone who saw it. A magical pot that produces food? He said, leaning forward in his massive carved throne. Tell me more about this pot, Obi. Tell me everything. Obi bowed low. Your Majesty, they say it is made of pure gold and covered with mysterious symbols. They say something, they say whatever food the owner requests appears inside it immediately. The orphan girl has been using it to feed herself. King Okuko stood up. Which orphan girl? He stood up, his rich agbada flowing around him. That pot belongs in my palace. It should be mine. I am the king after all. Everything in this kingdom, everything of value belongs to me.
by right. But Obi hesitated. But your majesty, the pot belongs to the girl. She found it. The king's face darkened with anger. Did I ask for your opinion? Go. Send my guards to bring that pot to me and bring the girl too. I want to see her face when I take what is rightfully mine. The very next morning, as the sun was just beginning to rise, the king guards came to Shoman's house. There were 5 of them, big men with stern faces, carrying staffs and wearing the red clothes that marked them as the king's own guards. They banged on her door so hard that the whole house shook. Open up! Open this door immediately! The king demands to see you. Poor Shioma, who had been sleeping peacefully, woke up with a start. Her heart filled with terror. The king? The king wanted to see her. What had she done wrong? With shaking hands, she opened the door. The guards pushed her roughly, not caring that they were invading the home of a young girl who had done nothing wrong. They began searching her small house, throwing aside her few possessions, tearing her mats, looking in every corner. Where is it? One of them shouted. Where is the golden pot? Shoma's voice was barely a whisper. Please, please, don't take it. It's all I have. But they didn't listen. They found the golden pot hidden beneath a pile of old clothes. One of the guards grabbed it triumphantly. This is it. We found it. The king will be pleased. No, please, Shioma cried, tears streaming down her face. The pot is mine. I found it. It's the only thing that keeps me from starving. Please, I'm begging you. The head guard looked at her with sympathy. The king has ordered us to bring the pot and to bring you. He will come with us now. Don't make this whole thing difficult. They grabbed her hand and dragged her out of the house. The villagers who had gathered to watch said nothing. Some of them looked away in shame. Others whispered among themselves, but no one stepped forward to help her. No one dared to stand up to the king's guard. The walk to the palace felt like the longest journey of Shoma's life. Her feet dragged in the dust, her heart heavy with despair. After all she had suffered, after all the years of hunger and hardship, she had finally found something good, and now it was being taken from her. The palace was beautiful, with high walls and guards at every entrance. Shoma had never been inside before. Poor people like her had no business in the king's palace. They led her through courtyards and corridors until they reached the throne's room. And there, sitting on his massive carved throne that was covered in a golden leaf and precious stones, was King Okonkwo. He was a large man, well-fed and comfortable, wearing the finest agbada Shioma had ever seen. His coral beads clicked together as he shifted in his seat, and his crown, a heavy thing of bronze and beads, sat proudly on his head. He looked down at Shioma with cold, calculating eyes, the way a hawk looks at a small mouse before it strikes. So, he said, his voice filling the room, this is the orphan girl with the magical pot, right? Shioma fell to her knees, as was expected when facing the king. Her whole body trembled. Your Majesty, the king held up his hand for silence. You know, in my kingdom, all treasures belongs to the king. Any gold, any precious thing found within my land, it all belongs to me. This pot, therefore, is mine by law and by right. Shioma's tears fell freely now, splashing onto the polished floor. Your Majesty, please, I'm just a poor orphan. I have nothing in this world. The pot is all I have. It keeps me from starving to death. Without it, I will die. Please, I beg you, let me keep it. Some of the people in the throne room, servants, advisors, even some of the guards shifted uncomfortably. They could see the cruelty in what was happening, but no one dared speak against the king. King Okonkwo waved his hand dismissively, as if brushing away a fly. You survived before. You found it, didn't you? You will survive again. You're young and strong. You can walk. He turned to his guards. Take the pot to my private treasury, lock it away safely, and give this girl, let's see, give her 20 naira for her troubles. 20 naira? For a magical pot made of solid gold. The insult of it made Chioma blood run cold. But then, something happened. Something shifted inside Chioma. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was courage. Maybe it was this desperate knowledge that she had nothing left to lose. She stood up, which you were never supposed to do in the king's presence without the permission, and she looked King Okonkwo straight in the eye. Your Majesty, she said, and her voice was steady now, clear and strong. Before you take my pots, let me show you how it works. You need to know the proper words to say, the right way to touch it, or it won't produce any food for you. Let me teach you so that you can use it properly. The king's eye narrowed with suspicion. He leaned forward. Why would you help me after I'm taking your pots? Shoma bowed her head humbly. Because, Your Majesty, if the pot doesn't work for you, you would think I treat you and you will punish me. I am just trying to protect myself. This reasoning made sense to the king. He smiled, a cold, greedy smile. Very well, show me how it works. The guards brought the pot to Shoma. She held it gently in her hands as if saying goodbye to an old friend. She placed her palm on it. It was warm, with a golden surface, and she closed her eyes for a moment. Her lips moved, whispering something that only she and the pot could hear. Then she opened her eyes and spoke loudly, so everyone in the throne room could hear. Your Majesty, this pot is very special. It was made by ancient spirits, and it has its own sense of right and wrong. It will only work for someone with a pure heart and a humble spirit. It will not work for anyone who has stolen it or taken it by force from its rightful owner. If such a person tries to use it, she paused dramatically. The pot will teach them a lesson they will never ever forget. The king laughed, a loud mocking laugh that echoed off the walls. Nonsense! Pure hearts, humble spirits, these are just stories to frighten children. The pot is just a magical object, nothing more. It will work for whoever possesses it. And now I possess it. He stood up from his throne. Guards, take this pot to my private chambers. Tonight, I will feast like never before. And you, he pointed at Shoma, you may go. Be grateful I'm letting you live with your life. Shoma bowed one last time. As she turned to leave, she whispered one final thing to the pot, so quietly that no one else could hear. Remember what I told you about greed. The pot seemed to glow just a little brighter in response. That night, King Okonkwo sent all his wives and children away. He dismissed his servants and guards. He wanted to be alone with his new treasure, to test it in private before showing it off to the kingdom. In his luxurious bedroom, surrounded by silk curtains and expensive furniture, he sat on his bed and placed the golden pot in front of him. He rubbed his hands together with greedy excitement, practically drooling at the thought of all the food he would command the pot to make. Now, he said, let's see what this magical pot can really do. He placed his fat hand on the pot and spoke in his most commanding voice. Pot, I command you to give me the finest pounded yam and egusi soup with goat meat, cow meat, stockfish, dried fish and crayfish. I want it to be the most delicious food ever made. The pot began to glow, brighter and brighter, until the whole room was filled with golden lights. The king smiled with triumph, leaning forward eagerly to see what would appear. But what came out of that pot was not what was expected. Not at all. Instead of delicious food, what erupted from the pot was pepper soup. But not just any pepper soup. This was the hottest, spiciest, and most unbearable pepper soup that had ever existed in the history of mankind. And it didn't appear in a bowl where the king could see and avoid it. No. It sprayed directly into his face like a fountain. The king's scream could be heard throughout the entire palace. My eyes, my face. His eyes felt like they were on fire. His nose burned as if someone had stuck hot coals up his nostrils. His mouth felt like he had swallowed the sun itself. The king jumped up from his bed, knocking over furnitures, tearing down his expensive curtains, rolling on the floor like a madman. Water! Water! Somebody bring water! He screamed, his voice filled with pain. His guards came running, alarmed by the terrible screams. They found their mighty king rolling on the floor, crying like a baby, his face swollen and red like an overripe tomato, tears and mucus streaming down his face. Water! Water! He croaked. Bring all the water in the kingdom. The guards rushed to bring the bucket and bucket of water. The king dunked his whole head into the water, but it didn't help. The burning sensation wouldn't stop. They brought in palm wine, nothing. They brought in milk, nothing. They even brought palm oil and rubbed it on his face, but the burning just got worse. All through the night, the great Okonkwo suffered. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat, he couldn't even open his eyes properly because they were so swollen. And every time he thought the burning was finally subsiding, it would flare up again, as if the pot wanted to make absolutely sure he had learned his lessons. By morning, the whole palace knew what had happened. The servants whispered amongst themselves. The guards tried not to laugh, though some of them failed. And by afternoon, the story has spread through the entire village. Did you hear? The king tried to use the magical pot and he sprayed pepper in his face. Haha! So the pot is really magical. It knew, he stole it. That's what he gets for his greed, taken from a poor orphan girl. God has punished him. People laughed and shook their heads. Even those who had been too afraid to speak up for Shoma now felt a sense of justice that has been served. For 3 days, the king suffered. His face remained swollen and red. He couldn't hold cuts. He couldn't eat solid food. He could barely drink water without feeling like his throat was burning. It was the most miserable 3 days of his entire life. On the morning of the 4th day, when the burning had finally begun to subside, though his face still looked like he had been stung by 1,000 bees, King Okonkwo summoned his guards with a weak voice. Go to the village, he croaked. Find that girl, Shoma. Bring her to me. When Shoma arrived at the palace this time, she was not trembling with fear. She walked with her head held high, escorted by the same guards who had dragged her there before. This time, the people in the throne room looked at her with new respect. The king sat slumped on his throne, his face still swollen and red, his eyes barely open. He looked like a completely different person, smaller, weaker, and humbled. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, nothing like the commanding boom from before. Take your pot, he said, not meeting her eyes. Take it and go. I don't want it anymore. One of the guards brought the golden pot and placed it in Shoma's hand. She held it gently, feeling its familiar warmth. Thank you, Your Majesty, she said with a respectful bow. She turned to leave, but then the king called after her, his voice filled with genuine confusion. Wait, how did you make you do that to me? Shioma turned back and looked at him with kind eyes, the same kindness she had shown even when she had nothing. Your Majesty, I didn't make you do anything. When I first found the pot, it told the truth. It said it would only serve someone with a pure heart. I didn't cast any spell on it. I didn't curse it or trick it. She paused. The pot simply knew who you were. It knew what was in your heart. The king flinched, as if he had not been slapped. Those words cut deeper than any sword could. Your Majesty, Shioma continued gently, you have so much already. 3 wives, 12 children, a palace full of treasures, barns overflowing with food. But you wanted to take the one thing that the poor orphan had. The pot was teaching you that greed brings its own punishments. And with that, Chioma walked out of the palace, carrying her golden pot, leaving the king to think about what she said. Now, here's the beautiful ending to this story. Word of what happened spread far beyond Umeze. People from neighboring villages heard about the brave orphan girl who stood up to a greedy king. They heard about her wisdom, her courage, and her pure heart. And you know what happened? A wealthy merchant from the city, a good man named Shukudi, who had been looking for a wife with good character, heard the story. He was not interested in marrying a woman just because she was beautiful or because her family had money. No, he wanted a wife with wisdom, with courage, with a good heart. He came to Umueze to meet Chioma. When he saw her, not in expensive clothes or jewelry, but in a simple wrapper, helping an elderly woman carrying firewood, he knew he had found what he was looking for. They talked and Shukudi fell in love with her kindness and her wisdom. He asked her for her hand in marriage, and Chioma, seeing that he was a good man, agreed. The wedding was simple but beautiful, and after they were married, Chioma never had to suffer again. But here is the most important part. She didn't forget where she came from. She used the golden pot not just for herself and her family, but to feed the poor and the orphans in Umueze kingdom. Every week, she would prepare food and distribute it to those who were hungry. She built a small house where orphans could come and eat a warm meal. She became known throughout the land as Chioma the Generous, and people blessed her and hailed her and named her wherever she went. As for King Okonkwo, well, his face eventually healed, though it took many weeks, but his pride never quite recovered. The story of how a magical pot had humbled him spread throughout the kingdom, and he became a slightly better king after that experience. He never completely lost his greedy ways. Old habits die hard, but whenever he was tempted to take something that didn't belong to him, whenever he wanted to use his power to oppress the weak, he would remember the burning of that pepper soup. He would touch his face, remembering the pain and the shame, and he would think twice. He even occasionally gave gift to the poor, not often, mind you, but more than he ever had before. It wasn't much, but it was something. And Shioma, she lived a long, happy life, surrounded by love and never wanting for anything. The golden pot stayed with her for generations, always serving those with pure hearts and always punishing the greedy. And that was it, my dear friends. This is the story of the poor orphan who discovered a golden pot and the greedy king who learned that some things cannot be stolen, they can only be given. Remember this lesson well. A pure heart is worth more than all the gold in the world. Greed will always bring its own punishments. All and kindness, even when you have nothing, you will always be rewarded in the end. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.